Now let us come together, not as a group of separate individuals seeking something outside ourselves, but as one consciousness turning inward to the presence that has never left us. For this work we embark upon these 30 days of stillness is not a program, nor a discipline, nor an attempt to add spirituality to an already overburdened human experience. No, it is an awakening to what has been true from the beginning, that the life we are living is not our own, but the life of God expressed as our own being. We are not entering stillness to gain reward or escape the agitation of the world. We enter stillness because within every breath, within every moment of quiet receptivity, there is a revelation waiting to be made known. The presence that feeds the birds of the air and clothes the lilies of the field is the same presence that animates your very existence. And yet, although it is ever present, it must be consciously recognized before it can become the activity of your experience. You see, the world has taught us to look outward for peace, outward for supply, outward for direction, outward for safety, but the infinite way teaches us that all such seeking is a wandering in shadows, for that which we search for lies already at the center of our own consciousness. Therefore, these days ahead are not a journey outward, they are a return home, a remembering, a quiet lifting of the veil that seems to hide the truth of our being, if you will. Think of this entire practice as a gentle turning within, again and again, to discover what has always been living you, not effort, not strain, but a simple openness. Here I am, Father. Speak, for thy servant heareth. And as the mind becomes still, as the emotions quiet themselves, there emerges a sense of presence, soft at first, but unmistakable until we begin to realize that God has never been absent, never been silent, never withheld anything from his own expression. And so I welcome you to these 30 days of stillness, not as students learning a method, but as those who are ready to behold the truth that has eternally been true. Let us walk humbly, gently, quietly into this inner sanctuary where God is revealed, not as a distant being, but as the very essence of your own I. Now, as we move deeper into this sacred work, let us understand the principle upon which the entire month rests. Stillness is not merely the absence of noise, nor is it a pause between the activities of the human day. Stillness is the doorway through which the invisible becomes visible, through which the presence reveals itself as the reality of our being. It is the state of consciousness in which the personal sense of I grows quiet enough for the true I, the Christ within, to be known. You see, as long as thought rushes, as long as fear clamors for attention, as long as the mind insists upon solving, improving, or defending the human picture, the deeper currents of spirit cannot be felt, not because spirit is absent, but because our awareness is preoccupied with shadows. And so stillness is not something we achieve. It is something we allow. It is a resting, a yielding, a receptivity to that which is already here, already functioning, already perfect. Joel taught that true prayer is not petition. It is not asking for things, nor attempting to persuade God to act on our behalf. True prayer is listening, and listening can only take place in stillness, in the silence of the soul. The voice that speaks without sound begins to make itself known. It reveals that all power is one, that all presence is one, that all life is one. And in that realization, fear dissolves, lack loses its meaning, and the sense of loneliness evaporates like mist before the morning sun. Understand this: stillness is not a technique to improve the human condition. It is the recognition that the human condition has no reality apart from the beliefs we hold about it. When we enter silence, we are not attempting to change our world. We are stepping out of the illusion that the world has power over us. We are returning to the awareness that God alone is power, God alone is presence, God alone is life. And so we begin this month not with striving, but with surrender, not with effort, but with trust as you turn within, whether for a moment or for several minutes. Remember that you are not seeking something missing. You are acknowledging something eternally present. You are creating the space in which realization may dawn. Realization that God is the substance, the activity, and the breath of your being. In this realization lies healing. In this realization lies supply. In this realization lies peace. Stillness is the door. Realization is the light that enters. Let us now turn to the first of our daily contemplations, the simplest and yet the most profound doorway to spiritual realization. Thou art here, these three words, when quietly acknowledged, have the power to lift the mind out of the realm of appearances and into the awareness of divine presence. They do not call upon a God far off, nor do they attempt to bring God into the scene. They merely recognize what has always been true, that the infinite is already fully present, fully active, fully here. You see, the difficulty in spiritual living does not lie in God's absence. There is no such thing as an absent God. The difficulty lies in our failure to be consciously aware of that presence. And so, throughout this month, whenever the mind becomes burdened, whenever the emotions stir, whenever the world presses upon you with its demands, simply pause and inwardly whisper, "Thou art here." Do not repeat these words as a formula or a mantra. Speak them as a recognition. Let them rise from the depths of your being, not from the surface mind. Say them softly within yourself, not to convince, not to compel, but to acknowledge. For in that quiet acknowledgement, something shifts. A subtle relaxation comes over you. The sense of striving eases. You begin to feel that you are not alone, that you never have been alone, and that the presence which sustains the universe is the very life of your own existence. Now, do not expect fireworks or sudden visions. Most often, the activity of spirit is gentle, like the dawning of light before the sun breaks the horizon. But if you will be faithful to this simple practice, you will soon notice that your reactions change. You become less disturbed by circumstances, less frightened by appearances, less tempted to take the burdens of the world upon your shoulders. The words, "Thou art here," create an opening, a clearing, through which the awareness of God may enter. And understand this, the presence that is here is not merely near you or around you, it is within you. It is the very substance of your life. It is the intelligence that governs every function of your being. When you say, "Thou art here," you are not calling upon an external deity, you are recognizing the Christ within the I that I am. Try this often, for a minute or two, many times a day. When you rise in the morning, pause. Thou art here. When the thoughts race, pause. Thou art here. When you face a decision, pause. Thou art here. When you feel alone, misunderstood, weary, pause. Thou art here. Slowly the words will fade, and in their place will be a feeling, an inner assurance, a quiet peace, an invisible companionship. This is the beginning of the month's unfoldment, the first step into the sacred sanctuary of your own being. Now, as we enter more deeply into this sacred journey, let us understand that these 30 days are not a discipline of the mind, nor are they a program to accomplish spiritual goals. They are an unfoldment, a revealing of what has eternally been true but seldom recognized. Each day offers not a new truth, but a new opening to the same truth, the one presence, the one power, the one life expressing itself as your very being. You may notice in these weeks ahead that some days feel effortless. A line such as "I and the Father are one" may lift your consciousness instantly into quiet assurance. On other days, the mind may resist, the emotions may stir, and the world may pull insistently at your attention. But understand this: both the easy days and the difficult ones are part of the same unfoldment. The surface mind may fluctuate, but the activity of spirit does not. It works within you whether you feel it or not. And so we use these 30 contemplative lines not as affirmations to change our human experience, but as invitations, doorways for the light within to shine more freely. Whether it is, "I live, yet not I," or "The kingdom is within," or "My peace I give unto you," or "I am the place where God shines forth." Each line carries within it a spiritual seed. You do not need to analyze it. You do not need to force understanding. You simply hold it gently in consciousness, like placing a seed in fertile soil. Then you step aside and allow the invisible to do its work. Throughout this month, approach each day with fresh receptivity. The truth never repeats itself in the same way. The mind may repeat words, but realization is always new, always living, always spontaneous. One day, the line "there is only one power" may appear to address fear. Another day, it may speak to your sense of supply. On yet another, it may dissolve the subtle belief that you can be separated from God for even an instant. You see, the power is not in the words. The words are merely symbols, markers that point to an inward reality. If you allow them to rest softly in your awareness, you will find that the words fade and the silence beneath them begins to speak. And it is the silence, not the statement, that heals, reveals, restores, and transforms. Therefore, do not rush through these 30 contemplations, nor judge the results by appearances. Spiritual unfoldment is seldom noisy. It does not announce itself. It moves gently, imperceptibly, like the tide that rises without sound. Yet one morning you awaken, and you know something has changed. The weight you carried is gone. The fear no longer has a voice. The sense of loneliness has evaporated. You feel accompanied, upheld, guided. This is the fruit of daily stillness. This is the fruit of quiet recognition. This is the fruit of 30 days spent turning within. And though you may not see the entire transformation while you are in the midst of it, the unfoldment is taking place nonetheless. The spirit within you never sleeps. Its activity continues even when you are unaware of it. Our task is simply to present ourselves each day open, receptive, available, and allow the inner light to reveal itself in its own way, in its own time, in its own perfect fullness. Now, as we continue in this sacred practice of daily stillness, something subtle yet profoundly transformative begins to take place within you. It does not arrive with fanfare, nor does it announce itself with emotional excitement. It comes quietly as a gentle movement of the spirit, a soft unfolding of awareness that Joel called the inner hearing. You see, the spiritual life is not lived through the human mind. The human mind is an instrument of analysis, of memory, of reason, and all these have their place in the world of appearances. But they cannot touch the infinite. They cannot grasp God. They cannot reveal the presence. Only the inner ear, that deep faculty of spiritual discernment, can receive the impartation of truth. And this inner ear awakens, not through effort, but through silence. As you sit in stillness, whether with the words, "Thou art here," or "I and the Father are one," or any of the contemplations we shall explore this month, you are tuning your consciousness to the frequency of spirit. You are creating the conditions in which realization may dawn, and then, without warning, without planning, there comes a moment when a truth rises within you, not as thought, not as memory, but as revelation. This is the inner hearing. It may come as a deep sense of peace, unconnected to any circumstance. It may come as clarity, a sudden knowing of what is right without any reasoning. It may come as a lifting of fear, so gentle that you hardly notice when it left. It may come as love, love that does not originate in the mind, but pours forth from a depth you did not know you possessed. Do not misunderstand. This is not imagination. It is not self-suggestion. It is the activity of the Spirit of God within your own consciousness. It is the Christ, the true identity of you, breaking through the clouds of personal thinking and revealing itself as your real self. And hear this. Well, inner hearing does not depend on your worthiness. It does not depend on your purity of thought, nor on your emotional harmony, nor on your spiritual accomplishments. It depends only on your willingness to become still, still enough for the noise of the world, the noise of fear, and the noise of personal striving to subside. When the mind is quiet, even if only for a moment, the inner ear opens. When the heart is receptive, even if only slightly, the light of realization enters. When you cease trying to reach God, God reveals himself as the very being you have never ceased to be. And so, throughout this month, as you return to stillness, you will gradually discover that a new dimension of life is unfolding within you. You begin to sense that guidance is no longer sought from the outside. It arises from within. You feel that strength is no longer the result of effort. It comes as grace. You notice that harmony is no longer created. It is revealed. This is the fruit of inner hearing. This is the beginning of spiritual realization. This is the awakening of the divine consciousness that has always been the center of your being. And once this inner hearing begins to function, even faintly, it will continue to grow. It will speak more clearly, more frequently, more naturally. It will become the quiet voice that walks with you, the silent companion that precedes you, the invisible presence that sustains you. And you will know, beyond all doubt, that you are being led not by human will, but by the Spirit of God. As we continue in these daily contemplations, something begins to take place within you quietly, steadily, almost imperceptibly at first. It is not dramatic. It is not emotional. It is not accompanied by sudden bursts of spiritual excitement. It is a transformation, but a transformation so gentle, so inward, that you may not notice it until you look back and discover that the landscape of your consciousness is no longer the same. You see, spiritual growth is not measured by outer achievements. It is not measured by visions, nor by sensations, nor by changes in circumstance. It is measured by the degree to which the personal sense of self yields to the realization of the presence within. And this yielding happens slowly, tenderly, through the simple act of stillness. One day, you will discover that situations which once disturbed you no longer hold the same power. You will find that the reaction which once sprang up instantly, fear, irritation, anxiety, has lost its foundation. A space has opened within you, a stillness that meets the world with peace rather than resistance. This is not something you have done. It is something that has dawned through grace. Another day, you may notice that the sense of loneliness has begun to fade. You feel accompanied, upheld, guided. Even in moments when you appear to be physically alone, there arises a gentle assurance. You are not walking this path by yourself. The presence that you have acknowledged in stillness reveals itself as the companion of every breath, the intelligence behind every step. You may also see changes in your sense of supply. You no longer look outward to people, circumstances, or opportunities as sources of your good. Instead, you begin to feel that supply is a flow, an unbroken, invisible rhythm of ideas, opportunities, and right activity flowing from within your consciousness. The fear of lack loosens its grip, not because you have acquired more, but because you have recognized that the infinite source is the very life living you in your relationships. 2. The transformation expresses itself. You begin to behold others not as personalities to accept or reject, not as bodies to please or challenge, but as the same Christ expressing through different forms. You begin to understand what Joel meant when he said, "I am you, and you are I." For the more you recognize the presence within yourself, the more naturally you recognize it. In others, perhaps most profoundly, your longing for spiritual results begins to diminish. You become less interested in what stillness can bring you and more devoted simply to abiding in the presence. The desire for experiences subsides, and in its place arises a contentment, a quiet joy, a sense of completeness that is not dependent on anything external. And here is a mystery. The very moment you cease seeking results, the results begin to appear, not as the world gives, not as rewards, but as manifestations of a consciousness aligned with God. All of this happens gradually, silently, like the soft turning of a season. You may not feel the change as it occurs, but you will awaken one morning and discover that your consciousness has been lifted. You will realize that the peace you once pursued now rests upon you. The harmony you once sought now moves through you. The presence you once tried to find now reveals itself as the truth of your own being. This is the quiet miracle of these 30 days. This is the transformation born of stillness. This is the fruit of letting the inner light shine in its own effortless way. Now, as this month of devotion progresses, something very beautiful begins to occur. Stillness, which at first seemed like a practice, something you did for a minute or two, many times a day, begins to live you. It ceases to be an activity and becomes an atmosphere. It becomes the invisible background of your life, the quiet undercurrent that follows you through each moment, each conversation, each decision. You begin to notice that the mind no longer rushes to solve or defend. It has lost interest in the frantic pursuit of human answers. A gentler movement has taken its place, a resting, a listening, an abiding. And this abiding presence becomes the very environment in which you live your days. You find yourself turning within, not because you must, but because the soul longs for the sweetness of that inner companionship. Joel often said that the infinite way is not a collection of practices or a code of teachings. It is a state of consciousness. It is the constant awareness of God as the only presence, the only power, the only life. Stillness is the doorway to that consciousness. And as you enter it again and again, the door becomes easier to find. At times, it will open before you even reach for it. You will discover that the Spirit takes the initiative, meeting you before you can call, answering before you can speak. And so prayer becomes effortless. Meditation becomes natural. You no longer try to get into the silence. Rather, you realize that the silence has always been there, waiting for your recognition. You cease striving for spiritual experiences. You cease seeking mystical states. The search dissolves. The seeker dissolves. And what remains is the presence of God, quietly expressing itself as your own being. As this deepening continues, you will feel a profound shift in how you approach the world. You no longer bring truth into a situation to change it. You bring consciousness. You bring the awareness that God is already there. You walk into the meeting, the conversation, the challenge, the unknown, not as a human seeking divine help, but as the transparency through which divine harmony reveals itself. Stillness becomes the lens through which you behold the world. Stillness becomes the sanctuary you never leave. Stillness becomes the assurance that God is living your life. And this realization frees you. You no longer live by the clock or by external demands. You live by inner guidance. You move when the Spirit moves. You rest when the Spirit rests. You speak when the inner voice speaks. You remain silent when it is silent. Every action becomes an extension of the presence, not an assertion of the personal self. This is the point at which stillness has matured from a practice into a way of life. You walk in the world, but not as one burdened by the world. You move through human scenes, but not as one subject to them. You live in the awareness that the kingdom of God is not a future attainment, but the ground upon which you stand, the breath you breathe, the life you are. And so, beloveds, do not be concerned with how far you have progressed. Do not measure your spiritual maturity. Simply remain faithful to the inner turning, and the inner turning will carry you effortlessly into the deeper waters of realization. For it is not you who accomplish this work, it is the Spirit within you fulfilling its purpose through the quietness of your surrender. Now, as we come toward the heart of this month-long journey, a deeper revelation begins to dawn. One so simple, so clear, so liberating, that it dissolves years of spiritual effort in a single breath. It is the realization that you are not the one living your life. God is the life that is living you. This is not poetry. It is not metaphor. It is not a comforting thought meant to reassure a troubled mind. It is truth pure, unadorned, unqualified. When the personal sense of I becomes still, when striving ceases and silence is allowed to permeate the soul, you begin to perceive that all the while, beneath the surface of your human doing, an invisible presence has been conducting the true activity of your life. Consider for a moment the way a flower opens in the morning sun. It does not try to open. It does not force itself to bloom. It simply yields to the invisible life within it. That life is its intelligence, its purpose, its direction. So it is with you. The life you believed belonged to your human personality has never been yours. It has always been the expression of the infinite made visible through you. When Joel said, "I can of mine own self do nothing," he did not speak of helplessness, nor was he confessing weakness. He was expressing the highest form of spiritual recognition that the personal sense of self has no power, no wisdom, no life of its own, and yet, when it yields, the divine self, the Christ, the I am, shines through with effortless grace. In the stillness, you begin to sense this great truth. You notice that inspiration arises without your thinking. Solutions present themselves without your seeking. Strength appears without your effort. And you come to realize that all along, the Father within has been the source of your every breath, your every intuition, your every moment of harmony. This realization lifts a tremendous burden from your shoulders. No longer are you attempting to guide your own steps, to secure your own supply, to heal your own body, or to direct the course of your life. The responsibility is released not into chance, not into fate, but into the hands of the very presence that is living you. Life becomes a listening, action becomes the natural expression of inner guidance, prayer becomes a recognition rather than a request. Harmony becomes the atmosphere in which you live. And with this realization comes an even greater truth. The problems you thought you had were never yours to solve. They belonged to the personal sense of self, which was never your true identity. As the false sense dissolves in the light of this realization, the problems dissolve with it. Shadows vanish when the light appears, not because they were overcome, but because they were never real to begin with. This is why Scripture says, "It is the Father within me who doeth the works." It is not a statement of humility, but of spiritual fact. When you yield to this inner activity, you do not become passive, you become transparent. You become the place where God shines forth, the instrument through which divine harmony is made visible on earth. And so, with each day of stillness, with each gentle turning within, with each quiet acknowledgement of thou art here, you are preparing the way for this realization to take root. You are loosening the grip of the personal sense of self and allowing the true self God being, Christ awareness, to emerge as the reality of your life. This is the great transition of which the mystics speak. The shift from being a creature trying to reach God to being the expression through which God lives his own infinite life. It is not a future attainment. It is the truth of you now, awaiting only your recognition. And now, as we bring this unfolding to its gentle close, let us remember that spiritual work never truly ends. It does not conclude with the final word of a lecture or the closing of a book, for the activity of spirit is continuous, ceaseless, and eternal, and it moves within you, whether you are aware of it or not. The stillness you have touched in these contemplations is not confined to these moments. It is the very ground of your being, ever present, ever available, awaiting only your recognition, beloveds. Take with you this simple assurance. You are safe, not because the world is stable, not because conditions are favorable, but because the presence that lives you is infinite, unchanging, and whole. You walk in the everlasting arms, held by a love that has never wavered and will never withdraw. No problem, no appearance, no condition of this world has the power to separate you from the life that is God expressing itself as you carry forward the stillness you have gathered here, not as a technique, but as an atmosphere of consciousness. Let it go before you into every circumstance of your life. Let it surround you in your moments of uncertainty. Let it lift you in times of fatigue. Let it reveal to you again and again that you are never facing anything alone. The presence walks with you as your own being, and it knows the way. When the mind grows noisy, return for just a moment to that awareness we have practiced. Thou art here. When fear whispers its illusions, answer softly, I and the Father are one. When you feel the weight of the world, remember, I am the place where God shines forth. Let these words become gentle reminders, not affirmations of something hoped for, but recognitions of what already is. As you continue beyond these 30 days, you will find that the inner hearing grows clearer, the inner peace deeper, the inner guidance surer. You will discover that the life you are living is not yours to manage, but yours to behold as the unfolding of divine grace, and you will walk through your days not as one struggling to reach God, but as one in whom God is already living, already expressing, already fulfilling his own infinite purpose. And now, let us rest for just a moment in the silence together, not to seek, not to ask, not to accomplish, but simply to be and to know. Thou art here, all is well, peace abides. May the grace of the infinite go before you. May the light of the Christ shine within you. And may the presence that is your very life be revealed to you more deeply with every passing day.